What's going on, friends? It is finally happening. The EPA is coming for our motorcycles. Not only are they trying to just transition us over to electric, they're really starting to put the squeeze on everybody when it comes to aftermarket performance. Now, if you guys remember, Harley-Davidson, basically they made an example out of them over the Screamin Eagle Super Tuner. And guys, it's not just affecting the OEMs now, it is now starting to affect the aftermarket. And this can mean some big changes for us coming in the future. Now guys, for years, the EPA has really kind of left motorcycles alone. They really just focused on the OEM manufacturers. And a lot of the aftermarket manufacturers that are producing tuners, pipes, cams, big bore kits, a lot of these things, they were able to skirt this by being an aftermarket manufacturer and putting that little disclaimer on there that basically said for off-road use only, not for use on pollution-controlled vehicles, etc. Well, that's really starting to change. The EPA is really starting to put the squeeze on aftermarket manufacturers today, and this is really going to have a ripple effect in the supply chain, meaning that basically it's going to be harder for you to go out and buy a non-compliant aftermarket part, basically what they would consider a race part. It's going to get more difficult for you to find these, and the reason why it's going to get more difficult for you to find these is they're putting pressure on the manufacturing level, and it starts at the manufacturer. Then this is going to trickle down to the supplier, and then when it gets past the supplier, we're getting down to the shops that actually purchase these through the supplier and install them for you on your motorcycle. Now, how this is going to affect us as individuals, if you want to buy these parts, that's a little too early to be determined, but if you can't get it, you're not going to be able to do it. Guys, please don't forget, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, well, this just affects the new motorcycles, anything newer. Well, yes, it does in a big way, but it also affects you if you have a twin cam, maybe even if you still have an old Evo motorcycle. You want to go out, and I'll use Vance & Hines, for example. That is one of the most popular exhaust manufacturers for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. When it comes to buying a new Vance & Hines exhaust system, if you haven't read the descriptions carefully, if you haven't noticed, they all have a high-flow catalyzer, which they are saying that it does increase torque, but they kind of leave out that little part where it's going to knock down the horsepower a little bit. Now, if that's not bad enough, if you haven't paid attention as well to the tuners, the same thing. Vance & Hines FP4. This is now 49 state emissions legal. It's not like the FP3 where it just couldn't be sold in California, and if you kind of read the fine details, it basically wasn't for use on pollution-controlled vehicles, etc. Well, that's gone away. Same thing with DynoJet. Kind of the same thing's happening with them too. They're basically, all their tuners are being sold with tunes that are going to be emissions compliant. Now, that creates a problem. And where that creates a problem is that basically, yeah, you could go out, you can tune your motorcycle with these, but kind of what I'm getting at here is you're going to have the same tune as that you would basically get with the Screamin Eagle Street Performance Tuner. You're not going to be allowed to adjust those air-fuel ratios the way that we were used to doing in the past to cool the motorcycle off, put some more fuel in it, get a little more power. Now, this is really sad to see. I hate to see that. I knew it was coming. I kind of saw the writing on the wall when they went after Harley-Davidson and made an example of them. Now, probably what you're thinking, well, heck, I could just go to a dyno tuner and they could basically tune my bike the way I want to tune it and get around this. Yeah, technically they could, but here's where the pressure comes onto the shops. Basically, the EPA, they could come out and they could fine them $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, whatever they want basically, per occurrence. Now, I don't know many shops out there because many shops are pretty much small businesses that are going to be able to afford to take a hit like that, especially if they come in and they hit them for one motorcycle, let alone maybe 5 or 6 if they find out they've been doing it. And if you guys remember the diesel trucks, all the black smoke fueling the crap out of them, they cracked down on emissions hardcore. They went after some of the big shops. they started finding them. They made a big production out of it, made just a horrible example out of them, and they pretty much got that curved. If you have, just for example, I'm saying if you have a diesel truck, they've got those catalyzers in them, they got the DEF systems. A lot of shops, they will not remove those. Basically, you can get a emission systems back exhaust on those. And that's kind of what we're getting into when it comes to Harley-Davidson motorcycles. S&S started doing this a while back. If you ever noticed, the S&S exhaust, they all had catalyzers in them. And I know what you might be thinking. Well, heck, I'll just go buy a full system. Well, guess what? The full systems, especially on the touring bikes, they've got the catalyzers in them now. And if you buy a set of slip-ons for a touring bike that you're just going to put on your stock header on your touring motorcycle, obviously the touring bikes, they still have the catalyzer in there. So the slip-ons, they're not going to have a catalyzer in it. But if you're buying a slip-on for, say, your Softail, same thing there. You're going to have that same issue. Now, perfect example, you're thinking, well, I'll just get a 2-into-2. Vance & Hines short shots. Okay, great. Guess what? They got a catalyzer in them now. Now, the one thing I can give credit to is I'm using Vance & Hines as an example here with the short shots. All their exhausts basically are coming with a high flow cat and their PCX exhaust technology. That does help increase horsepower. The catalyzers do help increase torque. And honestly, on a set of short shots, that's not a bad thing. You do need some back pressure on those because they're so short. So, and honestly, on those with the catalyzer and their PCX technology, that would help improve performance a little bit on that exhaust. Now, here's the caveat to all this, and this is the part I really hate. Emission systems and all these different things that manufacturers are having to do now, this drives up the cost. Because catalyzers all have these precious metals in them. That's more that goes into the manufacturing of the exhaust, which raises the price. Now, I understand everything has gone up, but when it comes to the short shot exhaust, you used to be able to get a set of those all day long for $300, $350. Now, they're about $500, $550. And it's even worse if you have to get a carb compliant exhaust. You're looking at $1,000 or more. Vance & Hines new 2-into-1s that have these new catalyzers in them, the PCX technology, you're looking at a $1,500 2-into-1 exhaust system basically when it's all said and done. Now guys, does this mean that performance is absolutely going away? No, I don't believe so. I just believe that it's going to have to be reimagined a little bit. And when I say reimagined a little bit, we kind of got to go to the brand that we all love to hate, and that is Screamin' Eagle Performance Parts. For years, Harley-Davidson has been putting out the Screamin' Eagle Performance Parts, basically that are emissions-compliant performance parts. Are they way better than stock? Do they make a metric butt ton of power? Not really. Do they make more power? Absolutely. You take a 110 tire shredder kit, put it on a 103, I guarantee you're not going to be disappointed, even if you have to run an emissions-compliant exhaust with an emissions-compliant tune. You look at a 131 that's got basically the Screamin' Eagle exhaust on it and a Screamin' Eagle tune. They're still making 130 horsepower. But the issue that's going to happen here is, especially with new motorcycles, obviously they're already ridiculously expensive, but it's going to drive that cost up even more just for the fact that you can only let a air-cooled motorcycle get so hot. And with taking basically the option that we had to fuel the bike to cool it down out of the equation, and you've already seen this on the Milwaukee 8s, how they come standard with oil coolers, bigger fins, and now all basically twin cooling is standard on all touring motorcycles these days, especially the 117s. You're going to see that trickle down into everything because they've got to keep the bikes cool, and as I mentioned, air-cooled bikes can only run so hot. Being an individual, could you get these parts and maybe take the catalytic converter out? Could you still do all these things? Absolutely. You could probably definitely get away with it. But the thing is, if you live in a state with inspections, they're really going to start checking this stuff out, and they're really going to start hammering down on it because the shops that are actually having to inspect these bikes, they're now on the hook and getting pressure put on them basically to not let you get away with it. And they don't want to get shut down or fined into oblivion. So they're probably going to be checking for that, and more than likely, if you don't have it on there, it's not going to pass and you can't register your bike. So definitely it is an interesting road ahead, and this affects numerous independent shops out there that do performance work. A lot of times if you want to do this on your own, it's going to get harder and harder to find an exhaust that's just a straight through performance exhaust that doesn't have a catalyzer in it, it's going to get harder for you to find a tuner. It makes that old stuff look even better. The old carburetor, the old straight exhaust. Guys, it's all really kind of going the wayside, and how far it's going to go, it's a little too early to tell, but all we can do is keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully it just affects the new stuff and if you're buying new performance parts. But this is going to make that aftermarket kind of, I guess it would kind of become the underground, where if you're going on eBay and buying older exhaust systems that don't have all this in there, just a little bit bigger than what they intended. But anyhow, guys, I want your opinion in the comments. What do you think of all this mess with basically pretty much are forcing us into catalyzed exhaust and basically EPA compliant tunes? How do you feel about that? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I know it's going to drive up costs, but I want to hear what your guys' thoughts on that. Are you okay with that? I mean, nobody's okay with it, but if you're okay with it, that's cool too. I just want to know how you guys feel about that. Would you be cool with running a catalyzed exhaust on your bike and having to run an EPA compliant tune just to be able to get your sticker and ride your motorcycle on the street? Let me know about that in the comments. But anyhow, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. I'm sorry it wasn't a little bit better news, but that's just kind of what's coming down the line right now. But guys, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to leave a comment as well. But anyhow, guys, till next week, you stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge those cars. I'll catch you guys back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.